People of Switzerland are looking at a European first this weekend when they decide whether to ban synthetic pesticides. Swiss voters are starkly divided over the issue.
Switzerland could become the first European country to ban synthetic pesticides in a referendum this Sunday. Supporters of the ban say pesticides can cause serious health problems and reduce biodiversity. Manufacturers say their products are rigorously tested and regulated and can be used safely. This organic farmer wants Switzerland to be a pioneer.
That would be unbelievably great for people's quality of life. Our drinking water will sometime in the future, 20 or 30 years, be pure again. Our soil will be fertile again, and we would have less dependence on foreign countries.
Another initiative to be voted on the same day aims to improve the quality of Switzerland's drinking water by stopping direct subsidies to farmers who use synthetic pesticides and antibiotics in livestock. If adopted, both proposals give farmers up to 10 years to make the transition. This dairy farmer says the consequences for farms and the rural economy would be brutal.
Our production would go rapidly down. We won't have any Swiss chicken meat, we won't have any Swiss pig meat, and the result would be there would be much more import.
Switzerland has been starkly divided by an unusually bitter debate over the initiatives. Some shoppers are in favor.
I'm going to vote yes, because I think we need to think of the future. We cannot continue to use pesticides for farming. It damages people's health, it damages the soils.
Many Swiss farmers say they feel their way of life is under siege.
Now you find a lot of people, especially in the cities, they have not even a clue what farming means. So if they have 2 tomatoes in their garden in front of the window, they think they understand farming and they know how to do organic farming.
Recent polls show votes look set to be close.
G7 nations reached a historic deal that's supposed to close loopholes on tax avoidance. But now experts raise concerns. They say Amazon may be able to escape paying more taxes. NTD's Evelyn Lee brings us the story.
G7 nations just reached a deal on global tax reform, but Amazon could dodge the bullet. That's unless G7 leaders close a large loophole in the deal. The UK finance minister says the deal is aimed at making the tax system a better fit for the global digital age.
What countries are working towards is figuring out ways to harmonize international tax rules so there aren't pockets of avoidance activity.
And U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said it will end the race to the bottom in corporate taxation and it will level the playing field for business. Currently, big tech companies like Apple, Microsoft, Google, and Facebook can avoid taxes by shifting their profits to subsidiaries in low-tax countries like Luxembourg, Bermuda, and Ireland. Amazon last year experienced record sales in Europe, but it didn't pay corporate taxes to Luxembourg because its headquarters there reported $1.4 billion loss.
These low-tax jurisdictions are being used as a way to finance, in a corporate structure, to finance investments elsewhere.
The historic agreement between the Group of 7 aims to tackle this loophole, but expert analysis shows Amazon might not be captured by the deal. Daniel Bunn, vice president of global projects for the Tax Foundation, says that defining subsets for companies is difficult. That means loopholes are being built into the plan.
Maybe we could sell off part of our business, have lower overall sales. Maybe we could merge with a less profitable business to bring our average total profitability down. It's a really complicated kind of set of issues.
And in Amazon's case, he says the e-commerce giant has a different business model than some of the companies being targeted. Pillar 1 of the G7 deal is designed to make multinational companies pay taxes, not only where they are based, but also where they operate. But it would only apply to companies whose profit margin exceeds 10%. That's a threshold that Amazon does not hit, partly because it reinvests heavily. The second pillar that makes up the plan will set a global minimum corporate tax of at least 15%, operated on a country-by-country basis. Yellen assured Reuters that Facebook and Amazon both would be covered. Sources say that while the G7 sealed an overarching agreement, details still need to be worked out. Evelyn Lee, NTD News.
Airlines flying passengers between Britain and the US called on Monday for the country's governments to relax virus restrictions. They want travel routes reopened between the two countries ahead of a meeting between President Biden and Prime Minister Boris Johnson.
We can set the pace for international travel. Two countries, low prevalence of infection, high vaccination rates, low risk. We've got to go for it.
That's British Airways CEO Sean Doyle pleading on Monday for authorities in the U.S. and the U.K. to come up with a plan to relax international flying rules between the two countries after more than a year of health restrictions.
So it's been devastating, but we have a great opportunity to get back in the air.
Doyle was joined in a virtual press conference by American Airlines CEO Doug Parker, Delta Airlines CEO Ed Bastian, United Airlines CEO Scott Kirby, and JetBlue CEO Robin Hayes. The U.S. has had a ban in place since March 2020, barring nearly all non-U.S. citizens who have been in the United Kingdom within the previous 14 days from entering the country. On the flip side, most U.S. travelers visiting the United Kingdom must quarantine for 10 days upon arrival. Given the high rates of vaccination in the U.S. and the U.K. and rebounding economies on both sides of the Atlantic, airline execs like Doug Parker of American Airlines made the financial case for lifting the restrictions.
International travel, as we all know, is fundamental to global economic activity. So safely reinstating transatlantic service would send an important signal to the entire world. And the formation of a U.S.-UK travel corridor would reopen the most valuable long-haul travel market for each of our countries and create significant economic benefit.
The plea to relax health restrictions on transatlantic routes comes ahead of a meeting later this week between President Joe Biden and Prime Minister Boris Johnson on the sidelines of the G7 summit of leading world economies.
I think there's much more at stake here than a holiday. It's about trade, it's about visiting friends and relatives, and it's about getting back and doing business and re-employing people.
Domestic travel has started to rebound, but global airlines are still hemorrhaging on top of the billions of dollars in losses last year.
Italian police are handing out dozens of fines for theft. Tourists have been caught red-handed stealing seashells, sand and stones from the nation's beaches. Italian police say they've issued citations to more than 40 people in the past year. Officers have been targeting the beaches of Sardinia, where the white sand is protected. Tourists face hefty fines as high as £2,500 and even jail time for removing it. Police say a number of police were caught with sand and shells at the airport. About 90 kilos of sand, shells and rocks were returned to the beaches they were taken from. And in other news, a stroll along the River Seine, a tour of the Louvre Museum, or a visit to the new D-Day monument, France remains on the UK's amber list as it lifts restrictions for vaccinated tourists from most of the world.
France is putting itself back on the menu as a destination for international tourists as of Wednesday. That's for those who are vaccinated. The government first announced the upcoming move last week. The relaxed rules mean vaccinated Europeans are no longer required to get tested, offering a much-needed boost for hoteliers such as Sergio Cachon.
We see this as a renaissance. After a year and a half when we've practically been in a coma, this announced reopening is an extraordinary ray of sunshine.
All of his 17 hotels on the right bank of Paris have by now reopened. Reservations are running on average at 30% occupied compared to 2019. He hopes the reduced restrictions on tourists will see reservation numbers increase. For France's tourism sector as a whole, visitor numbers are expected to reach half the level of a normal pre-COVID year.
We believe, and with a little hope, we will have around 5 million visitors this summer. In a normal year like 2019, we had 10 million. In 2020, we had 2 million.
France is also allowing in vaccinated tourists from most of the rest of the world, including visitors from the UK. British tourists will no longer need to quarantine, nor have to justify the reasons for their trip, though they will need to provide a negative test. But since France remains on the UK's amber list, visitors returning to Britain would face a mandatory 10-day quarantine as well as testing.
People have been in awe of the Northern Lights for centuries. Now scientists say they have finally proved what causes them. Physicists from the University of Iowa have proven the lights are produced by powerful electromagnetic waves. They're responsible for accelerating electrons towards Earth during geomagnetic storms. The theory was first put forward by a Russian scientist in 1946. Now, with the theory proven, scientists can recreate aurora borealis using a large plasma device at a UCLA lab. Scientists now want to tackle predicting how strong a particular geomagnetic storm will be. And in other news, a new electric boat created by Swedish company Candela hopes to be the solution to Venice's erosion problem. Here are the details.
Venice has long been in peril from the waves that motorboats create along its canals, eroding the foundations of historic buildings and threatening them with collapse. A new electric boat that flies above the water, presented during the Salone de Nautica boat show, might be a solution. Erosion, a problem known as moto ondoso, is caused by the wakes of motorboats, water buses and ferries washing against the walls of buildings along Venice's canals. Swedish company Candela's electric boat runs on computer-controlled hydrofoils or underwater wings that lift the hull into the air and make it appear to fly over the water. Candela says its technology significantly reduces moto ondoso damage.
So here in Venice you have a huge problem with moto ondoso, which is wake damage. And with our technology, when you fly above the canal level or the water level, you reduce that with 95%.
Candela says the boat travels silently on battery power, using a minimal amount of energy and creating a wake less than 5 centimeters high, similar to traditional rowing boats.
Before it's been impossible because you need huge batteries to be able to compete with combustion engines. But when you foil it, you drastically drop the consumption. We have the same consumption in 5 knots as you have in 20 knots.
The company is working on a water taxi and a ferry using the same technology. Candela hopes its hydrofoils will become a regular means of travelling in Venice, reducing pollution and erosion.
We have all seen how electrical vehicles have changed the pattern we travel on land. Now it's time to do that on sea.
Now, if you are watching on Sky TV 190 or Freeview 271, we have some news for you. From the 13th of June, we will roll out an updated broadcasting schedule. Stay tuned to our website ntd.com for details. That's the news for today, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Stuart Lees.